Welcome to Black History, Black Futures, the Art of Presence. I'm Hillary McAndrew Plate, Public Programming and Partnerships Manager for the City of Virginia Beach Cultural Affairs, and this is our fourth season of partnering with Norfolk State University and the Princess Anne County Training School Union Kempsville High School Alumni Association to present our public year-round series about Black history and Black futures. This year's national theme is African Americans in the Arts. So today we're focusing on the art of presence, holding presence in an industry often dominated by white people, in an industry often rewritten by others, and in an industry that can often be mystifying. How does one hold presence? Leading us on this journey to discover how two really fabulous artists have done just that are two wonderful hosts from Norfolk State University. So our video and digital host today is Dr. Stephanie Richmond, the director of the Joseph Jenkins Roberts Center for African Diaspora Studies and Distinguished Professor of Women's History. Our MC is the endowed professor of Virginia Black History and Culture, founder of the Center for African American Public Policy, director emeritus of the Joseph Jenkins Roberts Center, and an award-winning author and historian, Dr. Cassandra Newby-Alexander. Take it away.
Well, thank you so much, Hillary, and I hope that you all have an opportunity to come and visit some of these wonderful sites that are being sponsored by the City of Virginia Beach and its Cultural Affairs Office. So for those of you who don't know, the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, known as ASALH, is the organization that started Black History Month. It was called initially Negro History Week in 1926, and their whole desire, and this is groups of faculties, most of them based at Howard University, but Black faculty from different HBCUs, mostly along the Eastern Seaboard. And these Black faculty were interested in making sure that our young children understood and knew about not just African American history, but of life and culture. So you had social scientists, you had political scientists, you had sociologists, you had artists, you had people from all of the different realms, especially in the liberal arts, who were part of organizing this particular initiative. And since that time, it has not only grown to a month, but really a year-long understanding and teaching about different aspects of African American history and culture. And this year of 2024, the focus is, of course, on the Black arts. And our particular podcast is focused and entitled The Art of Presence. And of course, that whole initiative or that whole effort is to reverse those individuals who have been invisibilized. And of course, this invisibilization is all about trying to erase and replace those who actually created, those who actually founded and explored these issues of Black art. And they've been erased and replaced with other individuals who have taken ownership of that. One of the areas I always think about is jazz. It was African Americans who created jazz, and yet when you look at old movies or you hear people doing retros, all you hear about are the white artists instead of the Black artists who created it. So by reversing this, it gives people a sense that individuals have worth as opposed to what has happened before. And this invisibilization is, of course, what we still see today. So this particular month's theme helps to explore then this creativity, this resilience, this innovation from a culture that has uplifted spirits and soothed souls for 400 years. Looking at the music, the song, the dance, the literature, the folk tales, and the art. African American artists have used art to preserve then our history, our community memory, as well as empowerment. And so some of the different forms, the different eras, like the era of the New Negro, Black arts and Black Renaissance, hip hop, and Afrofuturism, have been led by African Americans. And of course, many people don't even know these different areas. The New Negro was a period starting in around the turn of the 20th century. It was outspoken advocacy of dignity and a refusal to submit to the practices and laws of Jim Crow. During the period of Black arts, Black Renaissance, you think of that as the Harlem Renaissance, this was a very influential period in which literary, artistic, musical, theatrical movement emerged. It was in this post-World War I period where artists focused on taking ownership of Black representations, moving it away from these racist stereotypes into a focus on Black identity and life. And so when you think of some of the poetry that came out of this era, you think about Aaron Douglas and his artwork. When you think about the jazz artists, going back to Cab Calloway and Duke Ellington, these are individuals whose works still are with us today. They are still cast and reformed, but they laid that groundwork. And then the era of hip hop that emerged. And of course, rap music really has its roots in very ancient West African initiation traditions for men. But hip hop became a cultural expression of what began as rap music, and even some of the things that happened before they started calling it rap music. And though it is seen primarily through the lens of music, it also is an engagement of visual arts, fashion, literature, and the spoken word. And it is a space where people can talk about race and social change. And then, most recently, we've seen the emergence of Afrofuturism, which is a cultural aesthetic that combines science fiction, history, and fantasy to explore the Black experience. As a science fiction fan for many, many years, I never saw representation of African Americans in science fiction. In fact, many critics of science fiction films and books have argued that this was a way that whites were trying to erase Blacks from the future. And of course, when you saw films in the 70s and 80s, of course, the one Black person who was in that film was always killed. So that you, once again, you would include them, but you would erase them as continuing in the future. And so Afrofuturism is changing that whole narrative and eliminating the racists that are the racist ideas that are part of that. So to begin our discussion, I am very pleased to introduce our panelists. The first one is Judine Somerville, who is a recipient of the Stephen A. Goldberg Award, the F. Lamont Bellin Arts Scholarship, and the Legacy Robe Honor awarded the ensemble member who has performed in the most Broadway musicals. She has performed in 5 original Broadway musicals, including the 8-time Tony Award-winning musical Hairspray. She was part of the original singing trio sensations, The Dynamics. She reprised her role for NBC's Hairspray Live, directed by Kenny Leon and choreographed by Jerry Mitchell. And of course, it included a stellar cast: Harvey Weinstein, Martin Short, Jennifer Hudson, Kristen Chenoweth, Ariana Grande, Dove Cameron, Sean Hayes, and Rosie O'Donnell. She also was a former Rockette at the Radio City Music Hall. And she's an accomplished musical theater performer, and I've listed you only a few of her credits. She was also an assistant choreographer to Otis Salid on the Fox Searchlight movie musical. She was in Black Nativity, starring Forrest Whitaker and Angela Bassett, as well as Jennifer Hudson, Mary J. Blige, and Jacob Lattimore. And she was seen in the film Malcolm X, choreographed by Salid and directed by Spike Lee. And there are many other credits. Her Broadway credits include On the Town, The Life, Crazy for You, Late Night Comic. She's been in national tours with Barry Manilow. Excuse me. And her television credits are long as well. MTV's Made, The Today Show, The View, Judge Hatchett, Good Morning America, CBS Early Morning, and these are just a few of her credits. So we are very honored to welcome Judine Somerville.
Fabulous to be here.
Thank you. Our next panelist that I am very pleased to introduce is Clayton Singleton. He, as well as myself, he's a Norfolk native, and I am just so pleased that Hampton Roads is a gift that keeps on giving to America. He has won numerous awards creating public art. He's produced several solo and group shows, including Walking on Paper at Artworks Gallery. His most recent works have included Art Installation Performance at Sono Gallery, Look Beyond at the Art Center, which is at the Selden. It was to benefit Autism Society of Tidewater and the Norfolk Republic. The Virginia Opera commissioned Clayton to design sets for Porgy and Bess and Freedom's Journey. And being a Norfolkian, there is always this connection with community. And so he has served as a member of Norfolk's all-city teaching team, as well as the Arts Center Board of Directors and the Norfolk Arts Commission. Clayton's artwork is about our ability to create our own stories. He layers and juxtaposes things that are central to his treatment of appropriated vintage photos, wallpapers, and texts. He's also helping to rewrite Norfolk's art curriculum, producing solo exhibitions, defining beauty, for example, at the Sandler Center for Performing Arts, The Cultural Shift at the James Wise Gallery at Norfolk State University, The Love of the Game at the Virginia Sports Hall of Fame and Museum, and Valedictorian, which consists of paintings, mixed media, and video. Clayton is exhibited at the Virginia Museum of Contemporary Art, the Chrysler Museum of Art, and has co-curated regional group exhibitions such as Now, African American Artists in Tidewater. And he has produced a solo exhibition, Future Love Paradise, which toured for 2 years. Welcome, Clayton Singleton.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to start us off with a whole series of questions, and there are going to be a few times I am definitely going to ask Hillary to join in on the conversation. And so my first question has to do with this really interesting word called invisibilized. And I hope you notice there's a picture that I selected that I think highlights that idea of being invisibilized. So I'm going to throw it out first to Clayton. How have African Americans been invisibilized?
What's funny is I think that picture says so much about it. The picture is a hoodie without a person in it, right? And hoodies have this dual resonance depending on who's wearing the hoodie, right? The fact that no one's in the hoodie just sets with me that we can have these garments that people wear, but black people aren't in them, you know? And I think that walks across a lot of what we do, as well as, like, for example, in the school system, when we don't have images of artists that are by black artists as major elements of art in our curriculum. You know, we have the Turtles, you know, with Leonardo, Michelangelo, all these guys that are always present. They're always present. But we don't have Kevin Cole. We don't have Rashid Johnson. We don't have these people. You know what I mean? You might get a Kara Walker nowadays. But the fact that we've helped create so much of the visual art that we enjoy, so much of the fashion that we enjoy, such as the hoodie has this resonance and this renaissance right now that it's okay to wear the hoodie. But it's not like we're going to get a lot of that compliment for making it a dominant and prominent part of fashion. You know, black people have done that. And that image itself is just like a perfect image of that.
What do you think, Judine? How have African Americans been invisibilized?
I have a plethora of ideas running across my mind. However, this hoodie resonates in a huge way. I have a 19-year-old son, and I don't have him wearing a hoodie outside because I don't like the way that the establishment looks at that. So piggybacking on what Clayton said, it's really, I get emotional about it. It's a situation, meaning that we are not given credit for all that we create. And I also feel like that hoodie represents where I'm from and where I live, not the best for kids of color. But Caucasian kids could wear that, and it means a totally different thing.
I thought you were going to say something else because it came up when Clayton was talking, and that is the invisible nature. You don't see a face in the hoodie, in this image. And that is exactly how black people are presented. And
how they're treated.
Yes, because it's a homogenization of black people. You have the hoodie and you assume when there's blackness that this is a black person, this is a criminal. And so that assumption makes the human being invisible. And it creates and instead, or as a replacement of that human being, there is the thing, the object. And we're still then commoditizing, we're still looking at black people not as human in our society, but as a thing. This ties in with the racializing that is part of America. But at the same time, it's not seen in a positive way. So this is an art form. This is a fashion because fashion is art. Mm-hmm. But it's not attributed to blacks except in a very negative way, in a way to harm blacks. At the same time, it is something that was created by blacks and became a fashion icon that many people around the world imitate.
All the time. Like
all day, every day.
Travis
all day,
Scott
every
now
day.
has like a hoodie line with these large, looks like Constitution letters on them, right? And excuse me, when you think about like the gray hoodie, particularly, you think about Trayvon Martin, and you think about the kids in my school that wear hoodies all day long, regardless. It was a big deal to have the hood down because it was less threatening, you know? And especially you've got this black kid that walks in with this hoodie that you can't see his face. And it's this thing of, I have to be able to identify you, you know? And that does set in a sense of criminality. Like, I need to know who you are in case I need to tell someone what's going on. And that's just so true.
As a parent of an African-American boy, what goes through our head of what they're wearing, how they're viewed, how the cops are going to look at them, it is traumatic. Thank God I pray and I'm in constant communication, and I connect with other parents, but it's a serious thing. And also in the school system, Black boys wearing that is not looked upon as okay. Whereas, again, your Caucasian counterpart could wear that and there's no discussion. Not fair. Okay. We create the energy, the fashion, the looks, and the establishment just goes and they're there and they're wearing it, and we get criminalized for what we do. Sneakers.
Right.
I mean, it goes on and on. When our son is by himself traveling on the train, he has these fierce Kevin Durant's that we bought for him because we took him to the game, et cetera, et cetera. But he doesn't wear those sneakers if my husband or he or him, we're not with him. He doesn't wear them because that's a sign that, somebody could take them. And we've already seen that happen, in real time on YouTube. And it's a sad commentary. It's not okay. And it gives me agita.
Well, I'm also thinking about how in the past, Harriet Jacobs comes to my mind, and this is an African American woman who had been enslaved, and after she freed herself by running away, she eventually became the seamstress, the primary seamstress for Mary Todd Lincoln. And she actually created a lot of the fashion. Everybody looked at what Mary Todd Lincoln was wearing and imitated that style of clothing. Never mind that it was Harriet Jacobs who created that style. She was an early stylist, but never received credit for any of it, never received financial benefits from the fashions that she was created. It would really take until the 1960s before you would begin to see some Black fashion artists and designers getting credit for the work that they did. And so when Judine, I believe it's your point, and that is about how when white people wear something that's created by Blacks, it's not stereotyped. It's not made negative.
It's fabulous.
Exactly.
Oh my God, it's amazing.
Right. Meanwhile, when it's a hoodie, it's like skate culture versus hip hop culture, but everything is hip hop now, right?
Right.
And sneakers you have a sneaker collection now, based in hip hop. Champion, the brand Champion was like not a great brand. Now it's a great brand.
It's amazing.
It's amazing. Timberlands come in colors now. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Back when we were wearing them, they were at Kmart for like $14, $19. So once it becomes part of the culture, it's like, oh, that's great, but you can't wear that. We're going to take that.
It's almost like the commodification
It's
of
the
it. Is that even a
definite
word? When the
commodification. It's the
commodification
definite
happens,
commodification.
that's when the invisibilization takes place.
Right.
And then you begin to see a society dehumanizing another human being through fashion.
And which I think is the same process. The people say the money can be made here off these folk. We're going to make the money off these folk. But these folk can't have any other money. Whether it be through music itself, whether it be through the writing, whether it be through the literature, whether it be through, we're in America, like name it that Black folks haven't been commodified. From our bodies to our thoughts to our dreams have all been commodified. I can't own it, but somebody else can own it. And that's where that's exactly what that is.
I think that's why it's so important to have conversations like this about how are you holding presence in the market in spite of that.
Right.
Because holding presence is a form of resistance, and I know that's another episode, but I think it's really amazing to look at this next question you're about to go into with them with, what are the things that are happening that, or that you yourself are doing that are ensuring that your presence is not invisibilized, that any monetization or commodification of a good that you've made
Right.
is flowing back to you.
Ownership.
That ownership's so important.
Ownership. You have to have ownership, and that's like, it's always been a big deal, but now it's like, it's easier to do, I think. Ownership. Like, artists are
And
always
also-
like, I want my masters. It's ownership.
Ownership is everything. And I also would like to bring to the fore that those moguls that have made it in the industry, in some way, they're teaching us, you got to own your catalog. You got to own Jay-Z, Michael Jackson. They're showing us by example, this is what you have to do. And yeah, I have to fight for what I know is mine. We don't always hear that conversation that's going on with contracts and things like that. But if we're paying attention, it is about ownership. It always has been. But now I feel like it's easier access to make that happen. And I think people are now aware of that. I don't know if people were really aware of that you could own what you did. I mean, when we look back, a lot of agencies and a lot of managers were all basically Caucasian, managing African-American acts, big acts. And if they didn't know how to speak up about what they needed, what they wanted, and in most cases back in the day, they couldn't do that. This is what you do, this is what you did, and that's what you're getting, and that's it. Go on and perform, or you don't. And come in, you can't sit in the audience. You got to come through the kitchen and stay in the back. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
Well,
No.
I think
No and no.
I think it's really interesting that you bring that up, Judine, because one of the things that you and I went through back in the day was looking at how contracts were so geared toward the interest of the institution bringing you in. And this was an institution that was really all about increasing equity in the arts, but the contracts were still sort of stuck in the Stone Age. And you and Eric Scott Kincaid and I and some other artists sat down with legal and said, we have some questions. Why can't they own some of the media rights now that we're videotaping these things, now that we're recording these things? And what I found that was really interesting as a producer was that a lot of artists still were not asking questions when being handed a contract. Not that they should have to, but you're not just artists, you're a business. And as a business, those contracts have to serve you as well. And so for me, it was a really interesting learning curve to watch artists, and particularly artists of color, come through. And some of them very young, not asking questions. And then, well, what's my role as a white person in this scenario? Make them ask questions. It doesn't mean that I'm against my employer. It just means that I'm saying if we're going to do right, you need to know what's going in this contract. And if you're comfortable with it, then be comfortable with it. But if you're not, then ask the questions. And that is sort of that first step in taking ownership and making sure that you have that, whether that's for a record label or a one-off gig or a podcast even.
Judine, you had something?
I just think now with social media and TikTok, these brands are going after people that have signed up and, are just on social media. I think it's really important to ask the questions. Even myself as a performer, 5 Broadway shows, former Rockette at Radio City. This particular year, I worked with some people that I had worked for many years, and I just automatically assumed that they would do right by me, and they didn't. And I realized that I have a lot to offer, and I need to be able to ask X amount of questions and be able to be satisfied with that before I sign anything, even though if I've known you for 20 years. So I'm still learning it, and it's really, really important.
Well, you all have said something that reminds me of some of the last words I heard from Little Richard. White people stole my music. He said that for years. And of course, as you began to peel back the layers of what he was talking about, like Pat Boone's recording of Tutti Frutti, then you find out, yes, indeed, they did steal his music. They did not pay him for any copyrights, and there were problems with Black people owning the music that they wrote. Hillary, you were talking about Stax Records, and so can you kind of go into that a little bit?
I'd love to do a little name drop. Somebody that I admire very much is Miss Vanice Thomas. She's the daughter of Rufus Thomas, the founder of Stax Records. And one of the things that, I grew up I grew up trying to be an actor, right? But I'm not a singer, so I was not going the way of Broadway with Judine. In fact, I recently had a snapping turtle run away from me when I sang. So what I was hoping to do was some drama or film, but so I hadn't really thought a lot about the music industry. So when I was sort of accidentally, on purpose, put into the position of producing a lot of musical artists, I had the ability to meet and perform and host Judine, but also Vanice's show. And Vanice's show is all about the women of the blues. And she traces the story of Black women who were not provided compensation for their contributions as backup singers on record labels. She talks about how if they were compensated, it might have just been for that recording session, and then there were never royalties, never residuals. And Stax Records was one of the first labels to really change that. And it was ownership. It was owned by Rufus Thomas, a Black man. And he was recording Black artists, and there was this cadre of folks who were now suddenly asking those questions of who does this belong to, and who's recording me. And she kind of goes through this wonderful history. She's still out there recording and sharing stories, and I think it's great because there are a lot of artists today and a lot of producers whose minds can be changed by hearing that story.
Well, excuse me. Well, you've brought up some great information for our next question. And some of you have actually kind of talked a little bit about this, but I wanted to ask it anyway. So what efforts have you made throughout your career to reverse this trend of erasing the presence and contributions of African Americans? And I'd like to throw that question out first to Judine.
I never really thought about the way that I lived my life and my career, that I wanted to keep that presence. I'm being honest. I never thought about that. However, throughout my career, you start to see the way people rock and roll in the world. You get to see how things are really done when you're in meetings with casting or you're around the creative team. And I've thought a lot about this because I've had some really great opportunities. I've been to some amazing spaces that this girl from Bed-Stuy, from the Lafayette Gardens housing projects, would only dream of. And I would have to honestly say that I am just being my authentic self, meaning I had a lot of great, fabulous people around me growing up. And although my dad wasn't around, my mom and my brothers, and in the projects, it's a community, for better or for worse. People are there to help you move through your life. And I feel like because I had that foundation of church, I attended the High School of Performing Arts in New York City. I was on scholarship at Alvin Ailey. My elementary school teachers, who I'm still in touch with, at 6 years old said to me, "You matter in so many ways," and things of that nature. So I feel so blessed to be able to, when I take that stage, when I'm in that dressing room, when I'm in rehearsal, I carry myself as if I am a leader, as if I am a star, and a star in the most positive sense of the word. And I'm always helping that next person to be able to be their best. And that's how I feel I have been able to reverse the trend of society erasing what we do. I'm concentrating on myself, and I think if you can do that, you are sending a message to others that this is how it's done. And people take notice. They may not say anything, but in years later, they'll come up to you and say, my gosh, you were so positive and inspirational to us in rehearsal. I mean, if it wasn't for you, ... So that's how I feel I've been able to keep our presence and be real in the room with conversations and not be afraid to speak up. I'm not afraid to speak up. I'm not afraid to speak up, and I'm not afraid to raise questions. And if it doesn't make sense to me, I'm going to take you to the side and I'm going to ask. You know, I think we need more of that. I think that will just infuse the community to feel like you don't have to be against the system. You just need to know how to navigate it.
You know, you've brought up so many important points. And before I comment any further, I'm going to throw that question out to Clayton.
Wow.
Sir Clayton, you're on, huh?
Tis I. What's crazy is it's basically how I try to walk through the world, right? Being a teacher of the great late tale of where all dreams come true. It's like everything about what I do is about making sure the kids know about their presence. Everything I do is to reinforce the fact that I don't know the percentage, it's high, like 94% of the kids are black kids go late tale. That could be wrong, but it's high, okay? In my classroom, the cabinets are painted like mud cloth, right? Bulletin boards are streaked with red, black, and green. We have mirrors that sit on the tables and mirrors placed around the classroom so they can see themselves, you know? The ones that sit on the table are called I love you mirrors. So you can see yourself and tell yourself I love you, right? Like it's this constant reminder that you're present and that you're part of the people, like you're part of the population on the planet and that you're here, right? So then we like totally slide that academically. Had a kid, she's a Puerto Rican girl, she's a freshman this year. She pulled me to the side one day. She was like, Mr. Singleton. I said, yes. She's like, I've had art classes before. I'm like, okay, your work kind of shows that, you know, good job, right? She's like, you show a lot of black artists. I'm like, yeah, I do. You know, because we need to know that black people create art. Mm-hmm. Like black people aren't just, quote unquote, dancing on TV. They're not, quote unquote, singing on the radio. They actually create art. They actually choreograph. They actually design things. They actually are architects. Like there's this array of people that you may not have heard about because of what your limited immediate access is. You know, so constantly through my school career, this is what I've tried to do. You know, as far as my professional painting career or art making career, I like try to do this thing called a shared economy. So if I'm utilizing you as a model, I may not just pay you with a check, but you also may get part of the profit, part of the money, like a commission, if you will, because I couldn't have done this thing without you, right? And I think that's important because, again, it goes back to ownership. Like, that's your image. Like, that's you. I didn't come up with that. So I could not have done this without you, right? And I think that's important, too, because part of it does come down to money. You know, part of being seen comes down to money. And I think that's a relevant point to make because the reason why we get commodified is because somebody's making money off of us. So why not you make money off of you?
Amen,
right?
honey.
You
Come
feel
on,
me?
somebody.
Feel like why not you make money off? I'm me. How come I can't get paid? Right. So I really do try to do that. And then even deeper than that is that I have helped to rewrite the curriculum that we use and to help kids get a broader array of who they get to learn about so that there are multiple histories, plural. It's not just one history that we learn. You know, it's not just the caves in France, but there are also caves with cave paintings in South Africa. There are also caves with cave paintings in India. You know what I mean? But we don't talk about those things in the Hansen. You know what I mean? So those things are necessary to let the kids know that, hey, we've always been here. We didn't just show up in this piece of the world or this part of the world or this part of our culture. We are integral. We are necessary right? These street lights and these stoplights, somebody was looking like me. So we do these things constantly. And that's just how I try to keep it going, is that it's constantly relevant, it's constantly alive, and there's a thread that you can find in any artwork. You can trace that all the way back as far as you want to go. You know, it's probably some brown people in there somewhere.
Well, you reminded me of what Pablo Picasso did.
Yes.
He denied for decades that he was not at all influenced. His art was not at all influenced by African art.
Right.
And then finally, after many, many years of profiting from all of that, he admitted it. And so if you go to France today, to Paris, there's a Pablo Picasso museum there. And they actually juxtapose the art,
Right.
the African art that he used in each of his paintings or sculptures. And you can see the influence. But the fact that he profited off of that at the same time denying that this was his influence is symptomatic of what you're talking about, of this years of appropriating and taking by force and by entitlement.
Entitlement is a great word, because I took that from you and I call it mine. You know what I mean? And so now museums are, quote unquote, giving stuff back. Okay, all right, great. But that whole concept to me just blows my mind. Like, I came to your house and took your TV, and and I got your Netflix code, and thank you. You know what I mean? And this goes beyond stealing cable. Like, this is like stealing authentic experience, stealing history, stealing being. You can't get that.
Well, it also goes into the culinary arts. Think about something as simple, when we think about it, but it's not simple, as mac and cheese, because there's a lot of bad mac and cheese
Watch me.
out there.
I saw some
Wait
ranch
for
mac
it.
and
Yes,
cheese.
absolutely.
What was that about? What was that about?
But the original culinary art that emerged in North America and in the American colonies was right here in Hampton Roads. And it was Caribbean influence, which means it was African influenced with native or indigenous peoples' culture and foodways and customs, along with British, or at that time it was English, foodways and customs. And it was people of African descent who actually pulled all of that together to create a culinary array of things that we call American cuisine. But in the latter part of the 17th and going into the 18th centuries, a lot of white prominent women began to write down these recipes and sold the book as their creation, when in fact it was not. They probably didn't even cook. But they
You're probably right.
How many logs does this take to heat this up? Four logs? Okay.
Some of those cookbooks are on the shelves at the museum, aren't they?
Well, that leads me to this question. And Judine, obviously, this latter one on dance forms, I want you to speak to. But both of you, Clayton and Judine, speak to this black art and dance forms and how it was represented in mainstream American society and whether that has changed. So
I think it has changed in some ways. I mean, what comes to mind is hip hop. And that dance form is just as important as ballet. And yes, I'm saying it because it is infused in our culture. And I am privy to a lot of dance work and a lot of dance genres, and to see how hip hop has literally changed the face of how we move, how we dress, how we talk, what we say, the body language, it's unreal. And I'm talking everyone. I don't care where you come from, you are so influenced. And what I want more in terms of, if you're going to do the hip hop, if you're going to wear the clothes, if you're going to throw out the language, know where it's coming from. Know why you're doing what you're doing. Do that, because when a conversation is struck, you can come with some information that at least I know you know where it's coming from. Again, we're talking about taking or recreating other people's work and not giving people the credit for it. I mean, that's not okay. That's never okay. However, dance is universal. And if you're going to do that, at least come with some information and some texture to know that why you're doing it, what it means to you, why are you even choosing that to perform? Like, those kind of questions are really, really important. But honey, hip hop, and hip hop. Have we seen Hell's Kitchen, the new Alicia Keys musical?
Heard about it.
Pretty amazing. And it's modern, it's African, it's hip hop, it's street, it's fabulous. It's wonderful. So yes, this has changed.
It has. And as one of the, I can't say originators, but I was out there on the corner. I was doing my little hip hop dances.
Your little thing,
Watch me. I was a whole B-boy. I had the stance. Okay. We had a dance group called the Corner Boys. We had a sponsor. You feel me? Like, we were doing the thing fizzle. You know, dancing our dance out on Granby Street. And it wasn't looked upon very well. It was like, y'all need to move. You're blocking the street. You're blocking the doors of these shops right here. Move along. But if you go to TikTok, somebody's pop locking right now with 3 million followers. Never been to Norfolk, never been to Brooklyn, never been to the Bronx. And they have this total life, again, this commodity that they're benefiting from the hours of sweat and tears and spending on your heads and the music and the batteries and just this life that we were living that we didn't get to participate in. You know, right? And there's this other dynamic to it. I don't really know how to phrase it, so forgive me. If I do it, that looks cool. But if a non-black person does it, oh, they're really good at it.
No, they would never say that about me. They
Well,
would be like,
but
"That is
right.
horrible."
You know what I mean? You know.
Because I've tried. We've done history of hip hop
have you done
as a
that?
program, and I'm not good. And no one would ever say, "Ooh, that's good."
And it blows my mind that when I was doing it, it wasn't good enough. But now that the kid that's got the Google Pixel commercial does the little head bop thing, he's got a couple of little moves. This dude's a millionaire. Like,
true.
right. So again, it's this. When it belongs to you, it's not worth much at all. But when it belongs to me, the value of it increases. Right? Your body as your own, it's not really worth a lot. But your body working for me, making me money, your value increases. And it's this like constant fight between worth and value.
So what you're really saying is that the template that America put into place that we call slavery has not changed.
Hasn't changed. Changed the name. Because I've always had this thing, once it's legal, it's okay. We just got to make it legal. We just got to say it's legal and it's okay. So I can take from you all day long, oh, that's stealing. When I make it a law that it's okay, oh, I'm not taking from you any longer. I'm paying you, or I'm benefiting from you financially. You
or
work
I
for
copyrighted
me.
it.
I copyrighted it. Those are your words, but I got to the office first. That's my seal. Oh, yeah, that's my patent now. How many patents have there been, right?
Well, the first the first spiritual that was published came in part from Lewis Lockwood, who was a white missionary who came down to Fort Monroe in September of 1861. And the first spiritual, because the spirituals came from Hampton Roads,
Right.
the first one that was published was Go Down Moses, which I find to be ironic.
Right.
And they really did not credit the people who they heard singing it. And of course, who knows who the author was, because these songs had been there for a while. But I mean, when you think about it, tell, O Pharaoh, to let my people go. That had so many different messages. And yet, the people who profited from that publication, whether they recognized it or not, had stolen from other people and had not paid them what they owed. They had appropriated that. And then, of course, when you think about all of like the Fisk Jubilee singers, the Hampton singers, they understood that white people like to hear them singing those songs.
Yep.
And so they were sent around the world to fundraise singing those songs. But they themselves actually never received the benefits, the financial benefits of that. And so, that has a very, very long history.
Yeah.
Hillary, you wanted to add a little something.
I just wanted to say I think it's really interesting that you brought up about the spirituals, because it is, I think it's that stealth is older than even America. It's that robbing of any oral tradition by the colonizing culture. You see that in Africa, you see that in Europe, and then you see it in how we're still experiencing it here in America. And it really boils down to, I got very excited when you all were talking about hip hop, because it hasn't just influenced dance or rap. It is art. It is fashion, it is dance, it is DJing, there's the 5 pillars of hip hop.
Gotta have them all.
And so, and each of those are infused in almost every bit of modern fashion, modern art, modern music, and yet how many people today know who Kool Herc is?
Exactly.
So I think it's really interesting that as we move forward in time, oral traditions don't look the same. They look more like urban traditions, or they look more like community traditions. And then those community traditions have become commodified and put out in there. And the folks who have originated them have been left behind. And that's, I think, what I feel is really exciting about having had the chance to work with both of these two individuals, is that in working with them as a producer, I learned so much from both of them, even in a very short period of time that you and I worked together. But what I saw, and I wanted to go back to, was this idea that Judine mentioned, which is you matter. Both of them make sure that no matter what student they're in front of, but especially in front of Black students, I have seen you both provide a presence that is warm and embracing, and that reminds them that concept, you matter, is what makes the difference. When we all decide that you matter, then maybe we see a better future. Maybe we see a future where, the red shirt isn't the only Black person in the Star Trek film. You know what I mean? So I was just moved by everything they were saying, and I thought, this is really interesting, because it does tie so much back to oral traditions and oral cultures, and a lot of that has to do with being prevented from learning to read, being prevented,
Exactly.
So this is a lot older than what we sometimes recognize.
Well, I think that even the use of the term oral culture is not exactly accurate.
True.
Because human beings pass on information in a variety of formats,
True.
and the written, the oral, the visual, the auditory. These are all the 5 senses are part of how human beings have always communicated their traditions. But if you what during slavery, what American society was, what they did was they made oral traditions sound like it's not as advanced in terms of civilization, not as important, not as well thought out, not as sophisticated. And so it still has somewhat of a negative vibe to it.
Well, absolutely.
Well, this kind of moves me to the next question, and I'm going to speed us up a little bit, though I've been holding you all back with these questions. Well, what challenges and experiences have you had in your career as an artist, Judine, as a dancer?
That's a great question. I've always thought of the glass half full instead of half empty, and my blind ambition made me see things as someone maybe looking on to my experience on rose-colored glasses, right? I was always prepared. I was always ready. I was always looking great, ready to go. And because of that attitude and because I prepared, my journey has been really fantastic. And not that I didn't have any bumps in the road, but I acknowledged it and said, okay, this is what's happening. This is what I need to do. And let's move on. My great attitude that I've had, that my mother said to me as a very young girl, your attitude determines your altitude. That has stuck with me forever. So when I am faced with a situation that isn't positive, and it happened to me in a Broadway show, I will not name names. However, there was a new choreographer that came onto the scene, and he was really ambitious and good, and it didn't work out with the creative team, and people took sides, and the powers that be had a talk with me and embarrassed me in front of people and things. And I had a moment, and then I said, you know what? I don't need to be treated like this. I have done nothing but support this choreographer. It's his first Broadway show. What do you do? And I left the Broadway show. So I'm saying that was a challenge. However, it opened the door for me to have the courage and to say, you know what? You're not going to treat me like this in any way, shape, or form. I'm leaving. And then the show closed about 2 weeks later.
Well, Judine, your mom's saying actually was on my wall in my office for the last 10 years, and I have it in a journal. I'm telling you, that attitude
gosh.
determines your altitude, and the way that she walks in a room and changes you change the temperature of the room, Judine, and you taught young people how to do that, and you still teach young people how to do that, and you teach people who are very different from you, like myself, how to do that. And I think that's one of the great gifts that artists in particular are able to do. Certainly also professors. You have this audience, you have this platform in front of people on a regular basis, and I just wanted to say that phrase has become very important. I've even said it to my own daughter. So,
and I say it to my children always. Clayton, you and I we should start a school. We should start a school. I'm very serious.
Let's start a school.
Okay.
Let's start a school.
I'm serious. I'm very serious. I mean, I've met a lot of professors. I've met a lot of people in academia, but there's something about the way you see it. Mm-hmm. You understand that? The way you see it and the way you express it is fantastic. It's special. I've heard a lot of these conversations. Together, we can do something amazing. That's another conversation. But the Spirit is just telling me to say that. I'm saying it.
Well, I'm glad you said it. You know what I mean? You feel me? I'm glad you said it. Because, it my mom, I've always been me. I've always been me. And, I wanted to be a singer, and I can't sing to save my life. My mom was like, boy, you can do a lot of things. Singing's not one of them. Pick something else. You know what I mean? And it's like, so I picked me. And by picking who I am and just how I move through the world, like I've always been this way, and I'm going to do it. Like I'm going to do it. Like if I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And nothing's going to stop me from doing it. Even if I go broke while doing it, even if I lose friends or favor while doing it, I'm going to go do it. And I like with my artwork, I've been in this weird space most of my career that it's, to some people, it's not, quote, black enough, right? Because it doesn't follow the, I heard a guy call it struggle art, right? My artwork's not about struggle per se. My artwork's about love, and it's about who you are as a human being.
But he never
Right.
mentioned any of those other things. He just looked at it and thought struggle.
No.
It's-
It was that it wasn't struggle.
Right, like in order to
Oh,
be
it
black art,
wasn't.
it's
In order
Oh,
to
it
be
wasn't.
black art, it's got to be struggle art. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I had,
Oh, okay.
I had this poem like years ago that was basically, this lady called me wanting to know if I did black art. So I asked her, what exactly do you mean by black art? And she was like, pictures of African dancers riding in the back of the bus with Harriet, Martin, Frederick, and I can't remember the rest of the poem, but it's like, that's what people would come to me for. And it's like, oh no, I don't really have that. Like, oh, well, no, thank you. I had someone come to interview me and were asking me about my art, and the question that they asked me was, do you find it difficult to get into shows because your artwork is of black people? I'm like, no. Literally, she did like this to the camera guy. She turned and she went, a little cut jank. She cut it.
Oh,
Now,
my goodness.
this was back when they had the whole jank on their shoulder, and it was huge. So he had to kind of do, okay, well, let me put this down. But it wasn't the conflict that was necessary.
That's so much like scripting reality
Yes,
TV. You know what I mean? Because
yes.
when I see your art, what I see is the modern, joyful experience of being a black person. You know, that idea that that's the color of the person in the image, but that doesn't define or limit your ability to experience joy or the beauty of the
Exactly.
world. The pieces you've done with the butterflies and the encounter with the natural world, and
Right.
I mean, all of that, to me, I think that's one of the things that sets you apart from so many artists and should be embraced, is that the black experience does not always have to be a struggle.
Exactly. And my work really centers around the fact that it doesn't have the white gaze. Like the white
Right.
gaze is not necessary for my work. But in some artists' work, it is. And it's valid work, and it's beautiful work, and it has value, and it's important. But that's just not where I sit. Like I'm a human being first. Like first.
But it feels like for you, like you've made that choice. That's what you've chosen.
That's how I was raised to be. You know what I mean?
Right. Not again, going off the subject a little bit, just how the media portrays us.
Right. That
When
is
my son,
more
as a
than that.
young kid, he said, "Mommy, every time something goes wrong, it's always black people." He must have been around 8 years old. It's always black people, honey.
Right.
When he said that, I was like, okay, this one here recognizes it at 8. It's wrong. And that's why you have to put people in their place.
Exactly.
But go on.
Exactly.
Go on.
And so that's what I try to show. Like I've said before to people that, I paint black people not as black people. And that really messes folks' head up. It's like, what do you mean? It's like, okay, you know how people paint white people, but they're not white people? They're just people? It's the same thing. It's the same thing. So that's hard for like people to digest too often, and it's been what it is, and I rock with it. Okay, whatever. You want the piece or no? No? Okay. And let's keep it moving, because on some level it's a commodity, right? So, but it's I've also had these beautiful advantages through my work. I get to go places. People ask me to come places I would never go. I get to come to cool things like this, because of the work that I'm making. And then I have kids that I've taught that go off to be artists and singers and dancers and writers and teachers. And I've worked with students I've taught as colleagues. Like it's a beautiful thing, because I'm in this space of sharing the life that I'm living through the visual arts. Like, man, come on, you can't beat that.
So
You cannot.
I'm hearing from both of you this wonderful thing, and forgive me, it's this.
The spirit is hitting you, honey. The spirit is hitting you. Go with it. Go with it.
Something is forming. But what I think is really interesting, and I knew I was like, you're going to love having these two together. You both, because of your attitude, the attitude that beauty is out there, success is out there, and it's just a matter of you taking it and doing your own. Yeah. And when people say you need to fit this box for this particular Broadway show or this box for this particular art show, you've said, oh, you know what? No, this is my boundary.
Exactly.
This is how I've defined myself, and it's not limited to this. And as you've owned that, you've taken, going back to that idea of ownership, you've both owned that. Mm-hmm. Your careers have blossomed in ways that you couldn't imagine, and as people are experiencing you, it's changing the perspectives.
It changes their perspective. I recall in lit class, we were studying E.E. Cummings or somebody, and I think it was all lowercase letters, and I made up a word. I thought I made a word up. It was wonderifical. And this kid's like, that's not a word. I'm like, it is a word today. You know what I mean? It's like, you can't just make words up. I said, bro, where these words come from? Somebody made these words up. If somebody can make these words up, I'm somebody enough to make up some words. Later on in life, I learned that, Oxford adds new words all the time. Mm-hmm. So new words get invented the same way that these words got invented. So I can have a life that gets invented the same way that these other lives get invented. Why must I follow the script somebody wrote for me? Mm-hmm. I don't have to do that. That's the difference between authorship and ownership. Like, I get to decide how I'm going to spend these 120 years. Yes, I'm going to make it.
Well, the template that America's had is all about confining, restricting. But when you two talk, you're talking about an attitude of possibilities. And, I always think of that quote from the Bible, without a vision, the people perish. And so to have a vision, you have to think of possibilities. You have to think outside not only of that box, but beyond that template. And that is really the essence of art, is it not? In many different ways. And so that kind of leads us to this next question about how Black culture has significantly impacted the arts. And so who would like to take that question?
I'll go ahead on and just say, it totally changed everything. It changes everything. We would not have what we have without it. And I can't simplify it more than that. We would not enjoy what we enjoy without it. Granted, I wasn't alive back then. I've only heard some stuff and read some books, right? But looking at it, there's no way we would be where we are without it. There's no way. When algebra class, when you change the variable, you change the outcome. Period. That's the purpose of learning algebra, learning how to deal with variables, right? So when you change that variable, you change that narrative. You change the outcome. Like none of this would be here. None of this would be here without Black culture. It is that whole nuanced debate of Black history versus American history. American history is Black history. Black history is American history. Like, there is the threading, there is the weaving of it. Does not exist without it. Like, if you do the thought experiment of what would have happened, and just work out that thought experiment. What would have happened if these things did not happen?
That reminds me of an article that Ralph Ellison wrote. What would America be like without the Negro?
Right.
And that is the essence of what people are fighting over today.
We are the hot sauce, honey. We are the sriracha sauce. We're the hot sauce of life. Period. Somebody needs to make a T-shirt or something. We're the hot sauce. When you see the influence of Caucasian singers with the rifting and the gospel feel. Where do you think that comes from? I mean, all of these, Clayton, you are absolutely correct. It was absolutely, okay, absolutely, and I'm making it up. Absolutely.
Throw that T in there. That's yours. That's yours.
Yes,
You can have that
yes,
letter. That's yours.
Yes, TT. But life would be totally different. We are the hot sauce of life. And I have nothing against the establishment, but let's call a spade a spade. Let's start speaking truth to power. How about that, for real?
How do you both incorporate the lens of African American culture or even the African diaspora into your work?
One of my main ways of doing it is the notion of visual repetition. Growing up, we lived in Park Place. Park Place is what Park Place was and what it is. It's changed a little bit now. They tore my entire apartment building down. They took up a block. It's got some tutors on it now, and a little bike path is real cool. But we didn't live in this bland environment. It had energy. It had decoration. There was pattern. There was rhythm everywhere you looked around the home, right? There was languages everywhere you looked around the home. And I incorporate those things into my work. You know, I use symbols, right? Little touch of foreshadowing. There's a show coming up soon. I'm about to bring out the wooden spoon and the wooden fork and hang it up on the wall, right? Folks aren't ready. Those who know, you know. If you know, you know. Okay? If you know, you know. About that wooden fork and that spoon. Some of y'all got fancy with a knife, but we know that was extra. Okay? I'm bringing like infusing that into everything I do, whether they be West African symbols, whether they be slang that the children teach me that I don't know. And it's like, that's a what? Oh, you can't say that in school. You can't say that. Yes, I can. Okay, great. Let's write that one down. You know, let's add it to the lexicon. So it's this constant rewriting that I'm doing, you know, this total incorporation of using this lens of living while Black, you know, just put it in there and like spices. Because folks were traveling the world trying to get some spice. So,
that is very true. And paid a lot of money.
A lot of coins went into that, yes. I feel I do that I'm a Black woman in America, somebody. Hello? And the way that I've grown up and my experiences and my confidence in what my family instilled in me, what the church instilled in me, wherever I am moving that forward in the most positive, most fun, most inspirational way so that people don't get overwhelmed by who I am. I'm saying you can infuse that energy in your own life. I've always been like that. It's not me coming in looking fabulous and going, oh my gosh, look at me. It's about moving that next student, that next family forward. When I work with these students and I have the thank you notes and the letters and the emails, when I saved a girl's life from killing herself, do you hear what I'm saying? My upbringing in church, my confidence that was instilled in me through the arts, but first started at home with my mom and my brothers. I know that the way I'm moving in the world is changing somebody else's life. I know it, I feel it, and that's a gift that I have. And that all comes with me being African American. Yeah. And the way I grew up and the sayings and things in church. I mean, it just comes up. And it's really amazing because I'm not trying to do anything. I'm being.
You're being.
I'm being. And that, I think, is the true gift. You're being.
And if I could latch on to that, it's in my work, school, I try to share that or really insist that with okay, I make them. I insist the students to use themselves. For example, if your nose is big, can you draw a big nose, please? Can you thicken those lips? Because you're doing a self-portrait. Why your lips thin like that? Make this look like you're you.
Real you
Feel me.
in real time.
Right.
Okay?
Right. Like
because
right
that
now.
subliminal advertising
yes.
will get you all messed up,
And
honey.
we're not doing that.
And
you know what I mean?
your hair, okay?
Right.
Your lips, your
Right.
nose, your body.
Exactly.
We're here for it. That's it. You don't need to be a size 2
Nope.
to be beautiful.
Nope.
You don't need a skinny nose to say that you're gorgeous. You are gorgeous. Period. That starts at home. Somebody.
Look here. I make sure it shows up in the classroom too. The kid.
Well, we love that.
Look,
reinforcement.
We have to, because many of our kids spend much of their time at school. Like that is
Correct.
their home. I have kids talk to me who talk to me more than they spend the minutes talking to their own parents. So when the kid wins second place in sculpture because of her bust has this nose and these locks and has this chin and whatnot, and her eyes got the little tilt to them like her eyes does, and she's like, she's like, how did I win? And I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, look at all these other works. Like, how did I win? I'm like, keeping it real? She's like, always. Because yours was one of the best ones. And it was because you used your you. You didn't try to be anybody else. You didn't try to subscribe to somebody else's plan. You were being your you, and you are worth it. Like, you're worth the work, right? And I think that's what we need to do, is to remind the kids is that you have to start showing up as you. You can't wait till you fail being somebody else. That's not going to work. You need to show up as you. And fail or win, you won as yourself. You learned as yourself. And that's what living this life is, because you can't live it as anyone else. You can only live it as you. So what's the purpose and point in showing up dressed up in some imaginary couture personality when you've got everything you need within you, right?
My mother
That's
used to say,
is.
be you. My mother used to say, be you,
right?
Because everybody else is taken. Okay?
That's right.
Come on, somebody. Yeah.
Well, that's what the artists during the New Negro were doing.
Yeah.
They said, all of this stuff that you all have stereotyped about us, fine. You're going to stereotype this? Then let me tell you what it really was about. So that they were transforming the negative, the intentionality of negativity. And they were explaining, expressing, and being authentic in that moment. And it became then not a weapon, but almost like their staff of power. And they were claiming that power with their artwork by showing who Black people really are. So yes, I've got a big nose by your standards. I have big lips by your standards. But these are beautiful. These are powerful, and more importantly, these are mine.
Exactly.
They're not yours to laugh at. These are mine to appreciate and to celebrate. And so that is what it sounds like both of you are about. And that kind of goes into, how does your background, your knowledge, your experiences influence your work?
I just show up as is. None of us have a warranty. You can't take me back. It's just what it is. What you see is what you get. I don't call them flaws. I call them my alls, because it's like awe-inspiring. Like, it's me. It's my me. Out of all the possibilities on the planet, I'm the only opportunity for me in the history of the universe, forever. So I don't know what else to do with that, but just be who I came out to be. And I try to share that in my work. I try to let folks know that you have both authorship and ownership of your own life. Write your script, say your words, sing your song, dance your dance, live the life that you create, and you can actually create it. It doesn't exist already. You get to decide how to organize those letters. It's a really cool thing that I like to think about. When you go to any library in the United States of America, they've got books on the shelves, hundreds and thousands of books, written in English, most of them are. And they're written with the same 26 letters. That's only 6 more fingers and toes that you have. 26 letters reorganized themselves to express all of these type of experiences from all of these types of people who've never met each other. And that blows my mind. And we get to do that every day in our life. We get to rearrange our letters so we can say what we want to say, dance what we want to dance, write what we want to write, sing what we want to sing, draw, paint, act who we actually are, because we show up as is. What you see is what you got.
Woohoo!
Judine, you have to follow that one.
Honey, I can follow it. I'm good. We're good. So for me, growing up in the projects informs everything that I do. Wherever I am world traveled. I perform at these galas that are really big and fabulous that may be intimidating to some, but everything that I have learned tells me I'm good enough, I'm worth it, I belong. If you don't know, ask. You are beautiful the way you are. If you want to zhuzh it up, do that. Basically, what I'm saying is I'm meeting myself where I am. And I think the blessing, one of the many blessings that I have received is that I am meeting you where you are. And I met myself where I am. And I can go into any room, and I mean any room, and be my authentic self. And it's fabulous. It lands well, and it's inspiring. I've always wanted to inspire people. Always, always, always. And always wanted to let young people know, if I could like fill Wembley Stadium in London or the Barclays Center, where I sang the national anthem a couple of times, if I could just get a bunch of young people from underserved communities to tell them three things, I would say, where you are is where you're supposed to be. 2, you can make a go of your life, whatever your circumstances are. And 3, believe that you are worth it, because you are. We don't say enough of that to young people. They have all these ideas. And with this social media, people are distraught. No one's posting an ugly picture. No one's posting a bad situation. It always looks great and fabulous. So I'm saying, thank God that I am the person who I am. I look in that mirror and I go, Judine, I love you, girl. You are doing it for other people. But more important, you got to love yourself first. Those I love yourself mirrors that you put on the tables at school, brilliant. Because you got to see yourself. You got to see what's possible. And my 2 minutes are up.
Well, that leads us to this last series of questions. Judine, I wanted you to just briefly describe maybe an example or two of, because you've talked a little bit about your theater experiences, but the thing that stands out the most in your mind about the theater world and what you want people to understand.
What I want people to understand about theater is that theater is about a plethora of stories. And having been in 5 original Broadway musicals, you start to get a sense of how the stories could be even more uplifted than they are. We need more people on the creative team that look like me. We just do. And I feel that not only African Americans, but Asians, it takes all kinds of people to create a story. And sometimes most of the times when you go into the rooms, everyone is predominantly Caucasian. So I would like the doors to open, I like the Red Sea to really part and have these young African American, Asian, minority people tell their stories and really give them a shot to make it on Broadway, to make it in the regional theaters, to tell these stories. It's really important. Representation matters. If you see it, you can become it. If you see a show that is written by a Spanish or Puerto Rican playwright, that resonates with you. You're excited, you see it, then you start to write. We need more representation on the creative team and producing as well. We need those people in the positions to make it happen. I wish I could contact some of the Hollywood people that could really make a difference in the world to these young people, because I'm more concerned about the young people coming up, that they have a chance to write that musical, that they have a chance to be that composer. You don't see that a lot. There are not a lot of incubating places and spaces where you can create that. So I'd love to see more of that.
I just wanted to insert a thought there, because there has been, just in the last 10 years since I last got to share the room with Judine, there have been more and more popping out, but I think what we're also noticing is something that we talked about earlier in the conversation about that controlled viewing, the controlled access, or limited media about it, because you have Mark Bamuti Joseph, who is a spoken word poet. He runs the Reach at Kennedy Center, but he's also written operas, and his opera was acclaimed. I think it was performed in San Francisco and Philadelphia, but where else? You have the new Alicia Keys musical, which, because of her already popularity, is likely to get a lot of push behind it. But right before that, just earlier this year, was Jaja's African Hair Braiding, or Jaja's African Hair Salon.
Awesome.
And Somi is just absolutely amazing. She has her own show called Dreaming Zenzile that charts the life of Miriam Makeba. And so you see so many more of these, but 10 years ago, when Judine and I were doing Meet the Artist, you didn't see any of those.
Yeah.
You were just starting to see Lin-Manuel Miranda
Correct.
pop out. And but now, since there are all of these others, and I think it's really a question of, it's not so much that they're not there, it's that maybe the media is not giving them the playtime in order to amplify the platform that they're taking. And people like myself as a producer need to understand that we're in a position sometimes of being able to assist in amplifying that message. And we therefore have a responsibility that if we are from the majority of people in the room, to say, no, I think that's a good idea, we need to give that more playtime. No, that needs to have a space in our roster for this year. And
that's what producers do. I mean, that's what producers do.
Yeah. But that's the making sure that it's an intentional focus on giving the amplification, or on asking those artists what do they want to see amplified. If you and I were going to do a show, Judine, or you and I, Clayton, what do you want to see amplified? As the producer, I'm not here to tell you what to do. What do you want to do? How do we create a space for that?
I think you're right. I think, yeah, they're out there, but again, they're not in the mainstream,
right,
as they should be. And they're super talented people.
Right.
So this is my last question. Tell us about your work in art education. You all have both really talked about it. Mm-hmm. But, in kind of putting it all as a summary, and what is the response that you get from students? What's missing from the public support of arts?
I think I can answer this quickly, going backwards. Mm-hmm. What's missing from the public support of the arts is we still think art is extra.
Yes.
Ding, ding.
We think it's spice alone, no meat. Like just walking around eating cinnamon all day. Like, that's not going to work for you. Did you do the cinnamon challenge? Did you try this thing? Excuse me. But we, culturally, as Americans, art is extra. It's a luxury. It's this, that, and the third. It's not a part of my mainstream. It's not in my everyday. And I think that's the biggest obstacle that we have. And we have, like in Norfolk, is doing things like more public art. Public art is an easier way to get people interested and to introduce the art to them, because it's easier to put it outside than to try to bring everybody outside, rather to try to bring everybody inside. That's a bit more challenging. So when you put it outside and you make it accessible, it makes it okay. So now I can do this art thing, and it's for me. And I think that that's the big thing, is having people understand that art is for you, because art is about you, or it should be, right? So that's like the biggest obstacle. And as an art educator, my whole gig has always been, for the past 30 years, of you are in the art. You are in it. You know, you are art yourself, and whatever you do and you speak, that is your artistic creation. So trying to get the students to understand that, and actually putting that in voice when it comes to conferences, and helping to write curriculum and doing presentations and explaining, hey, this is how we as human beings behave. This isn't an extra thing that rich people get to do. This is a thing that all humans naturally do. Children draw before they write. They dance before they walk, right? Like, so it's who and what we are as an entity. And that's been my charge through art education, is to share that obvious truth and get it settled in our bones so we can keep creating that. Yeah, that's the gig.
That's wonderful. Judine?
I think I'm going to pick up on what Clayton said. We do think that art is extra. That's the is extra. That's the problem. To me, art is just as important as math, science, and social studies. Now, I came up in a school where teachers made that clear to me at a very early age. Music, we had music every day with Miss Heimowitz. So for me, I just feel like if we can if we can get this into the curriculum, a lot of arts programs are non-existent. There are no arts programs. There's no gym program. There's no gym. There's no auditorium, some of these schools. So I feel like we have to set it up and make it inviting. You know what I mean? Take it outside, make a dance art installation. You know, you're with the poster, but then you turn it around and then you're doing the art that was on the poster and dancing, and the costume is going and its colors. I mean, you have to make it very inviting. And I don't think as a society, we have done great with that. We're struggling as a result.
Because education isn't always profitable. And it's, as an industry, it makes money in a few type of ways. And unless it makes money, we don't push it. Like that's like a problem. You know, where's the money coming from? Who's going to pay for that? And that's our gig, right? So we have to I don't know how to, it has to just become part of what we do outside. And by outside, I mean that it's not extra. It's just part of living. It's part of being alive. It's just part of what we do. I've been singing and dancing in like all my classes since I've been teaching. Like, it's just part of, and now grown folk, 30-year-old people with kids, this is the man I was talking about. And know these dances I taught them at 8 years old, right? You know what I mean? Because art is math and English and reading and science. Like, now we have STEAM, but maybe the art should be surrounding all of that. But it does all of these things. It does all these things on its own.
And how about when you are an artist and when you are a singer or a dancer and you love that, how about the math, science, and social studies blossoming even more?
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah.
Can we talk about that? Is there percentages on that?
Yeah.
That's a serious thing.
And
there
actually
are
studies
to support that.
Yeah.
And it's some of those studies are how organizations like Carnegie Hall and Lincoln Center and the Kennedy Center received funding to start charter schools and to teach artists and curriculum teachers how to co-teach. And the whole concept of art integration is built on studies that were done by folks like Eric Booth and Maxine Green that really illustrated that when you incorporate the arts into every type of subject, you see the performance in each of those subjects improve. And what you're saying is absolutely right. It's that as long as our society continues to see art as extra, then you don't have school boards making decisions about putting more money into that. You have them focusing on just those other subjects and then wondering why the scores are not the same. But the tests and the metrics and the studies are out there that show that an integrated curriculum is more successful. At Cultural Affairs in Virginia Beach, we talk a lot about the collaborative economy that is natural to the arts. What you were talking about doing with your paintings, where your model is paid for the sitting, but also a piece of the royalty from the sale. Whenever any group succeeds in the arts, it lifts the amount of tax dollars that flow from that ticket, which means there's more money to support more arts. And we don't talk about that enough in general, but we've started really spending a lot of time talking about that and talking about artists as a business and talking about the fact that every time you do a show, Judine, that show is generating jobs in costuming, in set design, in carpenters, in pit musicians, and all of those people are then going back out and spending money in the communities. And every time you do a gallery, you've got people who have to hang that gallery. There's an insurance company somewhere that got paid to insure all of those paintings, and it fuels jobs. And until we as a community of artists begin talking about how creativity fuels the economy, then you continually will see that it's extra. And I think the double whammy is that as African American artists, you have not only the art is extra, but you still have the stigma of, but you're Black artists, so you're invisible. And that's a tough, you're fighting one of the toughest fights out there to make sure that the
and
future...
paid less. Let's talk about that. And paid less.
And paid less.
How about that?
Absolutely. And you're teaching a whole new generation to ask the questions, to stand there and hold the presence, to change that, which I think is just incredible. I mean, I've written notes today. My heart is full listening to you, But that is... It's this slow crawl toward acknowledging that art is something more than just extra.
Yeah, and I know we're like time short here, but like for example, in school, I pitched this idea and I just decided to do it myself. That when students use what they learn in my art classes, when they use that information in other people's classes, I give them credit in my class for what they did in someone else's class. Right? So let's do a simple example like a project. And you did a project on how, I don't know, science happens. And so it's like you have this thing of you can come show me your project and talk about the complementary colors that you use. You can tell me about the variation of line that you chose to represent these particular quantums. And I give you credit in the art class for what you did in the science class or in the English class or in the history class.
That's brilliant.
You know
that's
what I mean?
Brilliant.
Because that's why we have education in the first place, is to increase these habits of mind. I've said 1 billion times, cake tastes best when everything's mixed together and cooked well, right? That's the best tasting cake. But if you have some sugar over here, some eggs over here, eat that if you want to, okay? I prefer the cake that's been mixed with the proper proportions and to the right temperature for the proper length of time. You know what I mean? And that's what we need to do in education, is mix the cake.
So what you're talking about, what you're advocating, is the same thing that so many of us have been advocating. Can we move out of our silos and integrate education, learning, and our society and culture into a single entity once again?
Yes.
We moved out of that when we went in the direction of the Cold War, when we said, we need more scientists so that they can create bigger, better weapons.
Right.
But the problem was, when we did that, we actually did less. And so our society, I'm constantly fascinated when people have this starving artist mentality. And the last time you had even a remote notion of a starving artist was in Europe, maybe at the end of the 19th century. But even so, that wasn't really the case.
Right.
So this is a way of demonizing areas that give us life, that allow us to be more than a cog in a machine. It allows us to be self-actualized and empowered. And I just want to thank both of you, Judine and Clayton, and Hillary, for your words of wisdom. And you have definitely given us so much information and so much food for thought, the passion that is there in all of you. I believe that there is a chance that we can change the world. And of course, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. How do you change the world? With one person at a time. And when you invest in education, you invest in our future. And so with that, I am handing this back over to Hillary to close us out.
Thank you, Cassandra. I am just honored to even be in the same room. The three of you loom large in my mind, having made incredible impressions on me. From Virginia Beach, we want to thank Norfolk State University and Dr. Newby Alexander and Dr. Richmond and Mr. Maynard Scales and Hot 91. And I can't wait to see where this podcast journey takes us. It certainly inspired and educated me today, and I think it'll do that for many others. Thank you very much.